I was kidnapped on a business trip and held for ransom, but the kidnappers messed up. A few decades ago, I was on an extended assignment in the wilds of South America. I work in the oil industry as a freelance contractor, specifically a geological drilling consultant, so I often have to drop everything at a moment's notice and fly off to some godforsaken oilfield to help a client sort out their geological or geophysical problems. I've been doing this for a long time, and in that time, I've racked up an absurd number of flight miles and an even more ridiculous amount of bonus points. I never fly below business class, and to this day haven't paid a single cent for it. One day, I got a letter, this was a couple of decades ago, saying I was needed in the capital of a South American country, I won't say which, but it's better known for exporting plants than oil, to help sort out some deep drilling issues. Things were a mess there. Lost drilling fluid circulation, broken drill pipes, cavern formation, rebels shooting at water lines, migration of small parts, and night shift workers being kidnapped and held hostage for ransom. Just the usual chaos. So, I flew into the capital for a meeting with the oil company bosses, who hired me to sort out this disaster as the lead geologist. I spent a few pleasant weeks walking around the city. Despite wild stories about political clashes and the fact that my hotel was surrounded by armed guards, I blissfully ignored the local chaos and focused solely on my job. My work involved research at the company headquarters, which was walking distance from my hotel. I'd wake up early at dawn, get dressed, and stroll through nearly empty streets to the office. Over time, I got to know the heavily armed guards with M16s stationed at the entrance to a rival oil company. I also found a fantastic little café that made incredible, throat-burning breakfast burritos and quickly got hooked on the local strong alcoholic drink, pisco, and lime soda, sold on nearly every corner. Usually, I was one of the first to arrive at the office, went through mandatory inspections, passed the metal detector, petted the huge German shepherds trained to detect explosives, then went up to the cafeteria to drink coffee. By the time the others arrived, I'd already solved some issue and came to the morning meeting with concrete results and suggestions. I worked in my office throughout the day, breaking only for a 2-hour lunch with food delivery, and around 5 p.m., I'd head back to the hotel. But on this particular day, something serious happened on site, so we all got on a conference call that lasted until 6 p.m., discussing what to do next. Once we sorted things out, we all left around the same time. In the elevator, one of the local managers turned to me and apologized for the meeting running late. He offered to drive me back to the hotel. "Don't worry about it, man," I said. "I'll just walk. Gotta stretch after that lunch." "Oh no, I can't allow that," he said. "It's too dangerous for a foreigner to just wander the streets. Come on, I walk every day and haven't had a single issue. I've even met some really great people. You've been walking to work every day for the past couple of weeks? What about your driver?" "What driver?" He immediately dragged me back into the office and started making phone calls. He clearly thought something was wrong with my head and decided I shouldn't be left unsupervised. Walking the streets alone? Have you lost your mind? He called one of his many drivers, and half an hour later, a heavily armored Toyota Bluebird with windows about 4 centimeters thick pulled up in front of the office. My boss explained that this was a company vehicle, and that from now on, I was only allowed to travel in cars with their company emblem on the windshield. "Fine, you're the boss." I climbed into the little tank, and for the next 45 minutes, we weaved and drifted through the capital's chaos. I'd never seen traffic like that before. Road signs seemed to be more like suggestions, and most traffic lights didn't even work. If your horn broke, you might as well call it a day. With all the armor and bulletproof glass, I expected us to flip at every sharp turn. Honestly, walking felt safer, but of course, I didn't walk anymore. Each morning, I'd squeeze into that armored can, arrive at the office a little shaken but intact, and in the evening, endure another 45-minute ride back to the hotel. The drivers changed daily, and I rarely saw the same one twice. That little detail would become very important later. The worksite was a mess. Logistical issues, geological disasters, drilling failures, one after another. I took matters into my own hands and contacted Cameron Ironworks in Houston, ordering about $3.6 million worth of oilfield equipment to fix production problems. I also tapped into some old connections with shipping companies to get the gear into the jungle. The guys weren't lazy or incompetent, but getting them to make quick decisions was like pulling a pterosaur's teeth. I spent countless hours on the phone, spent way more money than I was authorized to. Better to ask forgiveness than permission, I always said, and drank way too much coffee. But in 3 weeks, I managed to fix what would have taken them 3 years. Feeling like I'd caused enough chaos for one day, I staggered toward the cafeteria for another hit of their wicked coffee. Being a trained observer, I noticed almost all the lights in the building were off and no one was around. Suspicious. I checked the time, 12:30 a.m. local. Guess I got so caught up burning someone else's budget I lost track of time. At this point, I was so jacked up on caffeine I could have sprinted back to the hotel. But remembering my boss's strict warning, I shut down the computer and wished good night to the lone security guard at the door. I headed out to the parking lot, looking for the familiar company logo on a windshield, my trusty field case in hand, just in case of a surprise trip to the site. I spotted a beat-up Bluebird with a logo. As I'd later learn, it was a fake. The engine was idling. I casually walked up and tapped on the window. "Hey, you guys from company name? I work for Inc. and the war will." 2 dark-skinned men gave me a full up-and-down scan, exchanged a few words in rapid Spanish, and said, "See, we were told to wait for you. Get in." "Great. I'm at hotel name, you know it?" "See, of course, we'll take you." The car took off with a jolt and a cloud of blue smoke. Yep, these were definitely my drivers, I thought with a grin. About 25 to 30 minutes later, I noticed we weren't heading toward the hotel. In fact, we were leaving the city. Guys? Sorry, but are you sure this is the way to my hotel?" The 2 in the front exchanged wide, toothy grins, and the smaller one turned around and said to me, "Sorry, senor, we're not going to the hotel. You're our hostage now, and you'll bring in a nice sum from the group we swore allegiance to," he said, revealing a carefully sharpened machete on the front seat, while the driver lifted his shirt to show an old, rusty .32 caliber revolver. Message received. Strangely enough, this wasn't the first time this kind of thing happened to me. In Nigeria, they kidnapped not just me, but also a geophysicist, security guards, drivers, and even an armored Toyota Land Cruiser belonging to the security team. We all made it out unharmed, though no one ever saw that Land Cruiser again. Once, I woke up in a hotel on Leningrad Sky Prospect in Moscow to the sound of tanks rumbling down the street. I asked a friend if I should be worried and he just said, "Close the curtain and step away from the window, idiot." In Azerbaijan, our hotel came under artillery fire. We'd just gotten there after a 32-hour journey with endless transfers when some Armenian group, or so we were told, decided to ventilate the lobby. Luckily, we were at the bar at the time and only got away with ringing ears. In Iraq, the city I was working in got taken hostage, the whole damn city. It was fun enough until we ran out of gin, lime, and ice. We made it out thanks to a surprise air-and-ground firework display courtesy of coalition forces. Well, old sport, all that's left to do now is sit back and enjoy the ride. "See, senor," one of them said. "There's nothing you can do. We don't mean you harm. We'll just hold you until we're paid." "Fine by me," I said. Didn't have any plans anyway, and my calendar just magically cleared. Since we'll be spending some time together, can I at least know your names? Feels weird calling you Kidnapper 1 and Kidnapper 2. After a brief burst of machine gun Spanish between them, the smaller one said, I'm Carloso. The driver is Estefan, clearly not his real name. Excellent, I said, reaching out to shake hands. I'm the author, pleased to meet you. He shook my hand, staring at me like he expected watermelons to start sprouting from my head. You're not afraid? You're not scared, as you say? Hell no. You're just a couple of guys with a plan. This isn't my first mess, and I know exactly what part one play in this little circus. You say you won't hurt me, so it's in my best interest to be as agreeable as possible, but if you want, I can raise such hell we'll all end up in a ditch bleeding out. Just to set the stage, I'm not a small guy, around 190 centimeters tall, weighing 125 to 130 kilograms depending on the season and my proximity to a pub, white beard, and a fondness for giant cigars. Carloso was maybe 152 centimeters and weighed about 60 kilograms, while Estefan was around 100 kilograms, stocky, dark, and solid, but that machete and .32 caliber revolver did a good job of leveling the playing field. I'd been shot once already in another part of South America a few years back, and I wasn't eager to repeat the experience. Oh no, senor, there's no need for that. Please, we're all friends here. Perfect, I said. I promise not to act up or try to escape if you promise to treat me well. See, senor, I give you my word. See? We haven't even threatened you. We're not animals. Neither am I. So we've got a deal. Let's seal it with a handshake, like new friends. No point whining or putting on a scene. You catch more flies with honey than with nitric acid. So we drove for about another hour in pitch darkness through rural backroads until we arrived at a collapsing group of shacks made of tar paper and tin in the middle of absolutely nowhere. We parked, and they let me out of the back seat. I stretched with a groan, everything aching. I was dead tired, wanted a drink, a smoke, and to take a piss, not necessarily in that order. Hey Carloso, ¿dónde está el baño? Ah, senor. You speak Spanish? Yeah, I said, and that's pretty much it. In truth, I spoke it decently, but figured I'd play dumb. They both laughed and pointed me toward a wind-blown outhouse. Perfect, that'll do. I took care of business, came back to my new friends, and asked if they had anything to drink. Oh, senor, see, water's over there, said Carlos. Water? This is an adventure. We need to drink and celebrate the occasion. Oh, senor, maybe we have a little aguardiente beer guaro? Perfect. I'll take everything. Dawn was breaking, and my kidnappers were clearly exhausted. A sleepless night, nervous about the crime, and trying to keep up with a geologist from Wisconsin who had spent years in Russia. Actually, my last assignment lasted 8 months in eastern Siberia. Let's see what else we can drink to. Oh, I think we'll need another bottle. Ah, senor, I'm afraid you've drunk our entire supply. There's nothing left. What are you doing? Who, me? Just lighting one of my cigars. There's nothing better than a good morning and a good cigar. It's rare to see a couple of tough bandits turn such a lovely olive shade. Want one? I always keep a dozen in my case. No senor, but gracias. Looks like I've completely thrown them off. Actually, they wanted me to call my office, explain the situation, and outline what steps to take if they wanted to see me again. But frayed nerves and a killer hangover are a bad mix. For me, this was practically routine, not for them. They called in a few more guys to keep an eye on me, despite my repeated assurances that I wasn't going to cause trouble, and explained to them the agreement we'd made. They also decided it was too risky to call the company about ransom right now. They just wanted to leave a message and asked me to write their demand down so it could be anonymously delivered to my office. Of course, I even had a notepad and pen with me. What exactly should I write? After a quick dictation, I found out they were asking for around $10,000. That's it? For my release within a week. A whole week. So I signed the letter and handed it to a guy who was supposed to sneak back into town and deliver the note. Hey, since you're heading into town, pick up some more beer and snacks. Wait, is there a tobacco shop in town? I'd love to try the local cigars. Don't worry, I'll give you the money. I really just need more beer. At least a dozen bottles. Don't worry, I'll share. We're all compadres here, right? After some minor grumbling, I parted with about $250 and a list of my needs. After a bit of muttering, they decided that since we were friends, at least for now, it would be best for everyone if the big gringo got what he wanted, especially since he was paying. So it was settled. What now? Oh, senor, we need to sleep. Sleep? That's nonsense. Oh, hold on. I rummaged through my case and pulled out a flask. Almost forgot I had this. Now we can really drink. Where are your glasses? Oh, senor, no mas, please. Come on, give this a try. It's Russian hooch. Homemade Siberian rocket fuel. About 80% proof. This will perk you right up. I poured 3 solid shots of this suspicious, slightly yellowish, oily liquid into glasses and invited my new friends to join a Russian tradition, a toast to new friends and their success in all plans. Down the hatch. They actually liked it. Pretty good stuff, huh? I refilled their glasses and said, "Your turn now." Oh, senor, I can't. I topped off his glass. Oops, looks like you need just a little more for a proper toast. Senor, por favor, I really can't. But we're friends, right? I'm trying to be nice and a good guest. But senor, we're just simple people. We don't have such nice traditions. Then it's time to start. To health. To their credit, they bravely managed 2 more toasts, after which their faces turned a delightful shade of pickled cucumber. They were nearly begging me to stop. We need to sleep, por favor, senor. Of course, you go ahead. I'll just sit here and smoke. Dust settled behind them for quite a while after they left. I rummaged through my case again and found another stash. A half-liter flask of the strongest booze and a couple more cigars. I was relaxed, alert, and not the least bit worried, just slightly concerned for my new friends. I began strolling around the compound, puffing another cigar, surveying the area under the discreet but obvious watch of the other gang members. Suddenly, I caught a wonderful smell of food being prepared, walked over to a window, peeked in and saw a large grandmother stirring something unbelievably aromatic in a huge pot. I had no idea what it was, but I knew I was hungry, and I just might be able to get some food. After a chaotic introduction, they invited me in for a late breakfast. I offered to help chop vegetables or fetch water, but the grandmother firmly refused. She firmly decided that I needed a proper meal and sat me down at the table. Whatever the dish was, it turned out to be delightful, rustic cooking in the best sense of the word. Exotic spices, mysterious meat, homemade bread, fried bananas, and some kind of local low-alcohol drink. I ate until I was stuffed, and the grandma beamed, saying even her sons didn't eat that much. She was happy that I liked her cooking. A real treasure, a large, friendly, and motherly woman. By that time, the courier had returned with a note, and to his credit, he did a great job with my shopping list. Though I hadn't accounted for the current exchange rate and accidentally bought a whole truckload of beer, strong liquor, and cigars. I didn't offer the mom any payment for her hospitality, but I handed her $100 with the words, "Buy something nice for the family, This is my gift to you." By that time, my kidnappers sleepily crawled out of the neighboring hut and stared in amazement at all the goods I had purchased. I was already handing out cigars to the armed locals who had gathered, and I invited the mom to pick anything she wanted. "Send your cigar. Oh, excuse me, of course. Which ones do you want?" I gave her a box of Panatellas, which delighted her. "Senor, why are you here? Do you know my sons?" I explained to her my little predicament, casually offered her gelatin and a lighter for her cigars, and watched as she gradually began to boil with indignation. "Was it Jose and Juan who brought you here?" They introduced themselves as Stefan and Carlos, but yes, it was them. "They dragged me here last night." "Por qué?" "They said I was their guest. They decided to trade me for money." It was like a volcanic eruption. Mama exploded with Spanish swearing and went off on my new buddies. A blazing hangover and slaps to the head are not a good combo. Mama furiously scolded them for being idiots, scoundrels, and criminals. "How dare you disgrace our family?" Slap. "How could you do this to me?" Smack. "You know you can't do that. Now you become criminals." Another blow. I just leaned against the car, lit a new cigar, and took a hefty swig from my second flask. Dinner and a show all at once. I grabbed a relatively warm beer bottle, shrugged, opened it, grinned at my former kidnappers, and cheerfully said, "Cheers!" Of course, I couldn't understand the whole conversation, but the result was clear. Jose and Juan had to humbly apologize, begged me not to call the police, and promised to get me back to the hotel as quickly as possible. I turned to Mama. "Of course, no one got hurt, and everything turned out fine, but right now I can't leave. I've got all this stuff." I pointed to the car overloaded with alcohol and cigars. "And I clearly can't take it all with me. Maybe we throw a little fiesta and share it with everyone." The idea was a hit. Eventually, I passed out at Mama's house around 3:30 a.m. Around noon, with a heavy heart and liver, I was back in Bluebird, warmly saying goodbye to everyone. The drive back to the city was pretty quiet. Jose and Juan had not only been publicly humiliated, but were suffering such a hangover it could have detonated a sheep from 100 meters away. We pulled up to the hotel in a cloud of dust. Then I asked the guys for their address. They panicked. "You promised not to call the police." "Oh no, you misunderstood. How will I find you and Mama again when I come back? Or send you a Christmas package from Houston?" Eventually, they gave me the address and detailed directions on how to find them next time. I grabbed my things, even managed to keep a few boxes of cigars, and said a heartfelt goodbye. I assured them there would be no consequences as long as they never repeated such a stupid stunt. They shook my hand in relief, and we're still friends to this day. By the way, my ransom note ended up at the wrong oil company, and my boss thought I'd just taken a few days off. That's the kind of contract I have. I decide when and where I work. I thought the adventure was over. However, another oil company forwarded the note to the police, which led to a search operation to find me, while I peacefully slept the next 24 hours in the comfort of my hotel room. They never found me, but they did find a bunch of other lost gringos in local bars. And now we move on to the next story. Story 2, the one about how I almost boiled a dude who took over my bathtub. Many years ago, when I was still a totally green geologist fresh out of university, I went off to a mandatory summer field course, a hands-on geology training program usually held before earning a bachelor's degree. For some universities, it was the final required step before graduation. The course consisted of 2 6-day summer sessions of applied field geology somewhere out in the wilderness of the western United States. At that time, we were tougher folks. No dorms or hostels were provided. Everyone lived in tents with campfires and outdoor toilets. These conditions made sense because for the final 6 weeks, we were mapping 2 quadrants of the so-called primitive territory of Idaho. The primitive territory of Idaho is an area about 4.5 hectares located deep in Idaho, suddenly, where there are no permanent settlements, stores, or services, no roads, restaurants, or shops, but there are several high and chaotically scattered mountain ridges, wild untamed rivers, a couple of mountain glaciers, and elevation markings ranging from quite high to ridiculously high by any standards. It is truly a primitive area, an ideal place for a geologist. This territory also contained many abandoned logging and mining camps. We adapted one of them as our base camp. Abandoned mines and mining equipment were scattered around, and we took fresh water from icy streams originating from a glacier about 4 kilometers upstream from the camp. There was no electricity at all, but we had an abundance of natural gas, thanks to our diet, mostly consisting of beans, sausages, and beer. The first few days were spent clearing the area. There were about 30 of us, so we needed to clear the land of rocks, roots, and rattlesnakes, as each person had to find a suitable spot for a tent, build toilets, right by the entrance of an abandoned mine that had extracted fluorite, and prepare a stock of logs for sitting and firewood for evening gatherings. The area, I repeat, was extremely primitive. Our base camp had an additional bonus. Right opposite, there was an old abandoned copper mine, so there was a lot of forgotten copper mining equipment scattered around, which would play an important role later. In terms of amenities, we had only glacial freshwater, so bathing wasn't an option. Yes, we were tough, hardcore guys, not easily fooled, but no one wanted to get hypothermia. After a week, we already smelled a bit, roughly like a sports bag forgotten in the trunk of a car on a hot summer day. However, we were still scientists, albeit beginners, so one of us came up with a brilliant idea: to take an old metal ore cart from the abandoned mine, place it on stacked stone supports near the stream, naturally hiding it from prying eyes with local vegetation, and use old ventilation pipes from the mine to pipe water from the stream. This way, we could create a pretty decent bath. Of course, instead of the stream with glacier cold water, we now had a large tub of icy water, but at least our metal bath sat on 4 pedestals made of fine Mesoproterozoic migmatitic granite, and if anyone hard-working brought firewood and lit a fire under the bottom, the water would heat up, and we could comfortably soak and get rid of all the smells. Periodically, we had something called Reconnaissance Day, essentially a day off from current projects. In the last session, there were 4 sub-projects on magmatic, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks, plus 1 on surface geology, where everyone could do whatever they wanted. Officially, it was a time to solve problems arising within the projects. We worked in teams, and in our group, there were people with various specializations and quirks. So, when the first such reconnaissance day came, we quickly dealt with our minor tasks and returned to camp by lunchtime to spend the rest of the day relaxing and resting. After we tidied up our field maps and notes, suddenly bottles of whiskey and beer appeared from somewhere, so the fire was lit earlier than usual. We all sat around on logs, drank cheap beer, smoked even cheaper cigarettes, and entertained each other with dubious tall tales. When I suddenly realized that I desperately needed to remove a few layers of accumulated dirt from myself in Idaho, I grabbed a pack of 6 cans of beer and headed across the creek toward our improvised bath. Our engineering skills worked excellently. I skillfully moved the ventilation pipe and directed the stream straight into the bath. There was already a small fire burning under it, so while the bath was filling up, I went to get some extra firewood to soften the glacial chill of the water we had gathered. No more than 5 minutes passed before I returned and saw that one of our less conscientious comrades, nicknamed 2 Beers because of his inability to adequately handle ethanol, had already occupied the bath I had prepared with water that had yet to heat up and was enjoying one of my cans of beer. 2 Beers? What the hell are you doing here? I made this for myself. Yeah, but I need to wash too. You can use it after me. Just throw some more wood on the fire, and I'll keep an eye on the fire for you. No way, get out of here. You'll get in after me. Come on, don't be like that. Two Beers whined. I'm on kitchen duty today, and I've only got an hour before I have to get back to camp. Annoyed and displeased, I reluctantly agreed, like comrades and all that. I scoured the area for bark, branches, and twigs, returned to the bath, and threw a few dry twigs into the fire. Soon, I had a fairly impressive fire under the bath, and Two Beers was lounging in the water, the temperature of which had just stopped being unmistakably cold, sipping another can of my beer. So, Two Beers, what's for dinner tonight? No idea. We'll find out when we eat. I thought you were on kitchen duty. Oh right, I completely forgot I'm actually on tomorrow. You unbearable bastard. Got it, listen, I'll be right back. You remember that old joke, right? If you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, it will immediately jump out, but if you slowly raise the temperature, it will sit there until it's cooked. Well, Two Beers just became my laboratory amphibian. Now, a small botanical digression. Most of the firewood available in our area was hardwood, mostly oak, which burns long and steady, but is difficult to ignite. The other firewood was cedar, full of pine resin, which lit up easily, burned fast, and was extremely hot. Fast forward 10 minutes. I return with a huge bundle of top-notch cedar firewood, and see that Two Beers is peacefully snoring in the warm and cozy bath. I threw firewood into the fire like I was stoking boilers at a steam plant. I grabbed fresh beer from the stream. Nothing compares to eco-friendly cooling. Splashed some whiskey into it, lit a cigarette, and got ready to watch the show. Every time the fire started to die down a bit, I generously threw more cedar branches into it. I also threw a couple of oak logs into the embers so that when I finally got the bath back, I could relax properly. After about half an hour, and a good half cubic meter of burned cedar, there was a wild scream of unimaginable volume. Motherfucker, I'm burning! I'm burning! Hot! 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 Damn! Two Beers flew out of the bath, running across the stones and river rocks, then jumped into the already mentioned glacial stream. I'm freezing! 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 The whole camp immediately stirred and came to see Two Beers, who had barely managed to get to a gravel bar in the middle of the stream, and was standing there completely naked, his skin festively red, screaming that he was either burning or freezing. When I drained the hot water and refilled the bath, I had quite a nice soak myself. The camp, after that evening, had a wonderful news story for campfire talks. Well, that's it. Be sure to leave a comment about what you think of these stories. Thanks for watching this video till the end. Check out our previous videos, which you'll see right here, and good luck to you.